Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
This episode is brought to you by the all-new and very exciting Super Learner Academy. Now, Super Learner Academy is the home of my premium level content and masterclasses from my course on accelerated learning, speed reading, and memory, all the way to my course on productivity. Now, in these masterclasses, I go into the gritty detail that I just can't go into on the podcast or in the books or in the other online courses. I offer the worksheets and the homework and the types of individualized attention that can only happen in my own platform where I control the learning experience. So if you want to learn faster, if you want to remember more, if you want to read faster, and you want to be able to do this all with a cohesive 10-week program that's going to take you from wherever you are today all the way to certifiable super learner status, I want you to check out the exclusive discount that we're offering for podcast listeners only at jle.vi/learn. That's jle.vi/learn. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's show. You guys, this week I'm super excited to welcome back easily one of the most entertaining and engaging and personable guests that we've ever had on the show. For those of you who don't know, this guest is a lifelong productivity enthusiast who actually devoted a year of his life to testing every single productivity hack and strategy that he could find and blogging about it. Now, this blog actually exploded in popularity so much that it became his full-time job up until this day. And actually this week, our guest is actually publishing his much anticipated book called The Productivity Project. And he's achieved such a level of success with his productivity teachings that he's actually published through Crown Publishing and Penguin Random House all over North America. So because you guys loved the previous episode so much, and because I had seriously so much fun talking with him, I just had to get him back on the show to take a deeper dive into some of the techniques and some of the strategies and the wisdoms that he shared in this all-new book. Now, I do have to mention, I did get an advance copy of the book and I did skim through it, as you'll discover in the episode, and it is awesome, you guys. It is definitely at the top of my reading list. Now, in this episode, we're going to discuss some of the more nitty-gritty details, as I said, of how to achieve this peak productivity, what actually works, what doesn't work. And our guest was kind enough to actually share so much of the wisdom on the show for free, and so many of these teachings that he's now offering in his book. So I hope you guys will reciprocate and pick up a copy of that book. Just like last time, the episode is not only packed with actionable takeaways that you can put into practice today, but it's also freaking hilarious. And he had me in absolute stitches half the time. Just a hilarious episode. I do have to give you a quick warning. We did have a little bit of a connection issue, so if at some points it seems a little disjointed or the conversation switches gears really quickly, I do apologize for that, but I think our awesome editor, Evelyn, took care of that. So thank you, Evelyn, from everyone in the audience, and I do think the episode will still be absolutely fantastic. So without any further blabbing, let me present to you guys my friend, Mr. Chris Bailey. Mr. Chris Bailey, welcome back to the show, my friend. I'm glad I hit record because you've been giving me some solid laughs on the warm-up. So welcome.
You've been very quiet. I can feel that you want to save my antics for the recording.
I do, because I feel guilty if I hoard all the hilariousness. I've had a private conversation behind the audience's back when I really want to share, all your wonderful with the people.
Well, you're basically backstabbing your entire audience when you think about it. Not giving them access to my hilarious... I'm not that funny of a guy.
You know what? Let's just do it the most egalitarian way. Let's just give everyone your Skype handle. I think that'd be the easiest way. Just make sure it's equal access. So how are you doing, my friend? How have you been?
Whew, I am good. I just got back from a yoga class. I'm feeling good. I had my 30 minutes of meditation this morning after I woke up. I'm in a zenned out mode right now.
That's fantastic.
That time you know that period like between when you're asleep and when you're awake up, where when you're awake, where the whole world is like a haze. I'm like in that mode, but with 10 times the amount of energy. So my mind is calm, it's at ease, but it's kind of, I feel good. I've got this natural like yoga high. It's weird. Do you do yoga?
Once in a while. I do crazy person yoga, which is CrossFit.
Oh, CrossFit. Okay.
So I need some of that calm because I'm actually really looking forward to some productivity boosting stuff because I've been slaving away at this masterclass stuff.
Yeah.
Which hopefully by the time this recording comes out will be live. And, it's a lot, man. It's a lot to build your entire whole platform thing. So I'm hoping you can inspire me with some practical productivity tips.
You betcha, my friend. You betcha.
So tell me, you've actually, speaking of productivity, you've been in lockdown mode for quite a while. I've sent you a few emails back and forth. I know you have this auto reply, like I check my email once a decade and only if I like you reply kind of situation. So what have you been up to? Tell the audience, and how does it feel to come up for air and be among the living again?
Oh, it feels amazing. Yeah, I've been locked down. Where was I in the book when we were chatting last? Was I in the middle of writing it? Do you recall? It was so long ago. I think I was in the middle of writing it.
I think you had written it, but it was kind of in the final stages.
Yeah. So I handed in my book. My editor and the entire team at my publisher, really dug it. And so then we went through a couple stages of editing and fact checking and all that fun stuff. And so it's a tedious process because after you create something like a book, I've found that it takes so much out of you, but you're not done after you put it out, after you put the words on the page, because you have to read every single word, every single line, every sentence multiple times so that it's just perfect and crafted the exact way that you want it. And especially through these editing gates that make it better, frankly, that, hone the message. It kind of, makes a Michelangelo's David out of a block of granite, because you put these ideas out there and you kind of see what you write from your lens, right? So you see it through. One of the things I'm realizing is it's almost impossible to look at the world without any bias. And so there's always bias, there's always prejudice, no matter how enlightened you are. The only person on the planet that's ever looked at the world without any bias has been probably the Buddha, but he's achieved enlightenment and it's, he's an edge case, we can say. And so you see all of your words from the perspective of somebody else when you work with a really talented editor and go through these different stages. But the reason you're getting that auto response is because I've been hunkered down in this mode, just, crafting the very best book that I could. Because I figure, like, why do anything if you're not going to do it right? And, email is one of those things where you can't get rid of email. Like, nobody gets rid of email. Even people who want to get rid of email and have all the flexibility in the world don't get rid of email. But it's one of these things that you can kind of shrink and control to spend more time and attention on other things. So first of all, I'm sorry about the auto response.
No, don't be sorry. I'm inspired by it.
I hope the book speaks for itself.
I'm inspired by it. I'm actually trying to cut down. I now am using rescue time to measure, and it sends me a notification when I spend more than 15 minutes a day on email, which hopefully only happens once a week, at the beginning of the week. But do you have any other tips for our audience on how they can cut down? And when I say our audience, I mean me. How can I cut down my email use?
Yeah. So the thing about email is it takes up a disproportionate amount of your attention than it does your time. So you might spend 15 minutes on it throughout the day, but if you switch into that context out of other contexts, such as writing a book or working on a master course, it's going to take up a disproportionate amount of your attention and compromise your performance in other areas too. So the thing about email is it doesn't exist on an island. It exists in a way that's interconnected with all of the elements of your work. And so when you switch out of different contexts in your work, you end up compromising your performance. So if I were to give some advice, and I hate really giving advice, I much prefer to share what works for me because I hate being preachy. A lot of people are preachy, but it would be to simply track and become aware of how often you check your email every day. And you don't have to make an effort to change things, but just keep a tally, keep a sticky note on your desk. And whenever you switch into that context away from something else, and instant messages are the same way, and, telephone calls are the same way, whenever you switch into these low return contexts in your work, just make a tally. And the thing about making a tally is it makes you aware of what you're doing, because you don't often take that step back to become aware of what you're doing in the first place. And I think that's where the heart of productivity is.
I really love that. That's a really nice segue into, well, I guess a segue back, a back way into talking about the book, which, I appreciate the advanced copy. I have to admit, it gave me a little bit of a productivity and procrastination issue, because as I was trying to prep for the interview, I couldn't help but actually, I'm skimming through the book, trying to find some questions. And I try not to read.
Yeah. Well, you skimmed it. You didn't read it. I come all this way to do this podcast.
Yeah, man.
Interview.
So I try not to read the books before I do the interviews, because then it can come off as...
Because you're lazy.
Because I'm lazy and I read so slowly, But...
Okay. No, I do that too. Like, I think it's kind of like how everybody thinks they're an above average driver. I think like 70% of people think they're an above average driver. 80 or 90% of people think they're middle class. I feel like reading is the opposite, where everybody thinks they read slower than they actually do. Because my girlfriend, she says, I'm such a slow reader. And I think I'm a slow reader. You think you're a slow reader.
Oh, I'm just being sarcastic, man. I'm, I teach a course in speed reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but so I try not to read the books before, because then it's like the questions that I ask are just so disconnected from what the audience probably wants to know. But yeah, you're right. I'm totally lazy.
Yeah.
So it gave me an issue though, because the book is very interesting and it sucked me in, and I ended up spending like an hour, kind of flipping through and reading different sections. So I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I want to read the whole thing now that we will have the interview over with. But I really because we just had an interview with Derek Sivers, and he talked about how books need to be more practical and approachable and applicable right away. And so I love that your book starts with boom, where to start. And you actually give people an estimate of how much time it's going to take to read each chapter. So I wanted to ask you, where does someone start when they want to be more productive?
Well, I think the mistake a lot of people make is not stepping back to figure out what they want to become more productive on. And so when somebody says, I'm so into productivity these days, and then they just work faster and harder at a more frenzied pace, they're doing the opposite of what they need to do in order to get more done over the course of the day. And so where I think somebody should start with their productivity, and how I've structured the book, a book. There's 25 chapters, and like you said, all of them are really short. But, I had some time to kind of make it fresh and entertaining along the way. Because the thing about productivity is it's like, for so many people, it's just so boring. And, I'm different, and you're probably different in this regard too. And maybe a lot of your listeners are. So this point might not resonate with them that much. But most people I talk to, whenever I mention the word productivity and say, I study productivity for a living, they think of something that's so cold and corporate and about efficiency. And, it's like I turn to a block of ice in front of them that I'm just so boring that I study productivity. So, one of the things I try to do is make it entertaining along the way and bring that voice to it. And, I inserted, I don't know if you caught like the Seinfeld references, like a couple shrinkage jokes in the book scattered throughout. I have a bunch of references to Taylor Swift lyrics. I'm not sure how I got off on this tangent, but, where to start is taking a step back. Figuring out what you want to become more productive on in the first place. And one of the things that I've realized when it comes to productivity is that a task can be valuable for one of two reasons. The first is that it gives you a big return on your time. And so if you look at a couple of tasks, and this is an extreme example, I'll admit, but if you look at something like watching Netflix for an hour and writing a book for an hour, or working on a course for an hour, it doesn't take much thinking to come to the realization that writing the book or working on the course will provide you with an insane amount of productivity or, results compared to watching Netflix. I conducted a productivity experiment where I watched, I think, 70 hours of Netflix over the course of a week, but that's beside the point. There's different value embedded in different tasks. And so, not all tasks are created equal. And so that's the first kind of way something can be more productive. The second way is that it adds more meaning to your life. And so, take that same Netflix example and compare that to spending time with a loved one. I would say spending time with loved ones would make you more productive when you equate productivity with how much you accomplish and not how busy you are. And so that's the best place to start, I think, is, figuring out, okay, what are the most valuable tasks in my work and in my home life? What adds the most meaning?
That's brilliant. And that's one of the things I try to emphasize also in my kind of productivity teachings, that really the reason to be more productive should probably not be to get more work done, to work more and all that. It should be to open up time. And this is a point that I noticed right away in your book, to open up time for things that bring you joy. It's like, get the work and the providing out of the way, and then be productive in another way, which is, being a happy human being.
Yeah. And the way I come at things is we have 3 ingredients that we combine over the course of every day in order to get stuff done. There's our time, there's our attention, and there's our energy. And there are ways to focus better and bring more attention to your work. And there are ways to cultivate how much energy you have. But the time that you have every day, unless you sleep less, then you end up wasting more time because you don't work as efficiently. The amount of time that you have every day is fixed. You get 24 drops of the stuff every day. And it's your job, I think, to manage that time as best as possible, to work on these smartest things. So you can be productive on email all day long and not accomplish a single thing. But if you're productive on the right things, that's kind of where you'll become the most productive, I think. I think the big mistake, and I think where a lot of people's minds go to when they think about productivity, is they go to efficiency and effectiveness, whatever the hell effectiveness means. Instead of when the day is done, what have you accomplished?
Right. And I think was it what you needed to accomplish as well?
Yeah. Was it what you needed to accomplish? And what's different in the world or in the lives of the people around you because you lived a day of your life? And a lot of people are left with nothing at the end of the day. And I know your listeners won't fall into this bucket, but the people who accomplish the most are the ones who create those results.
Absolutely. So I want to ask though, because on the topic of kind of email and doing things that aren't really worth doing, you talk about the other side of things. You have a chapter called Cozying Up to Ugly Tasks. And I thought that was brilliant because for me, so much of my lost productivity is bargaining and negotiating and kind of shying away from the stuff that I just don't freaking want to do.
Yeah.
And I guess when I'm looking for more productivity, what I'm really looking for is more effective way to get that done so I don't have to worry about it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. What would you say is the ugliest task in your work, if you had to name one?
Well, right now I'm dealing with just administrative work, like bookkeeping, working with the bookkeepers, stuff like that.
That's the worst. Yeah, just so tedious. Usually the way things work is, and this is a kind of a weird connection I realized, and when I realized this, I thought, is this really the case, for me or for everyone? And it's that the higher return a task is, so the more it allows you to accomplish with every minute of your time, the more your brain resists it. Because doing busy work is easy and it doesn't lead you to accomplish anything. Like checking email all day long. Your mind doesn't put up a fight to checking email. I get about 500 emails a day. And that used to be a point of bragging, like almost humble bragging. And I'm ashamed to admit that, but it was a point to say, because, I get 5 times as much email as you do. So the world needs me 5 times as much, but it's kind of a pain in the ass now. And my mind would gravitate towards doing email versus other things because those types of tasks were less aversive. And we talked about the procrastination triggers last time, I think, right?
Right.
It was probably so long ago that somebody listened to that. But, the idea behind the triggers of procrastination is that there are certain attributes that a task can have that make you more likely to put it off. And I'm going to try to remember them. I talk about this a lot, so you think I will. Boring, frustrating, difficult, whether it lacks personal meaning, whether it lacks intrinsic rewards, whether it's ambiguous, and whether it's unstructured. And the more of these attributes a task has, the psychology around the task aversiveness says that you're more likely to put it off, that your mind will have more aversion to those types of tasks. And I find that fascinating because procrastination is such a big, ugly subject, and it's hard to get down to the science of it. But that's what it shows, that these big, ugly, and oftentimes important tasks in your work all have these attributes. So, making a plan to flip them, to fire up the logical part of your brain is something that you should do. And chances are, if you get paid more than minimum wage, and this is just a reality of the work that we do today, where if you get paid more than minimum wage and you're not working, this factory type, assembly line type work, chances are you do brain work, you do knowledge work that has some of these attributes. And that's why people pay you more than minimum wage to do them. It's worth kind of taking that step back and making a plan to combat that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I did also notice that so much about the book is about creating that motivation, setting up the planning. It's like, it's the Abraham Lincoln saying that if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And I really saw a lot of that in your book.
Yeah. And that's, the book kind of combines that sharpening with a bit of awareness too. And so when I stepped back from writing the book, one of the weird things that I realized, and one of the folks that provided an endorsement for the back of the book, Marshall Goldsmith, he put this in his blurb saying, this is practical Buddhism at its finest. And I thought, like, really Buddhism? I study Buddhism and I am Buddhist and I meditate every day and stuff like that. And I kind of realized that so much of productivity is about becoming not only more aware of what you're doing, but also more deliberate about the things that you do. And so the thing that lives at the heart of productivity, I think, is this intention. And we're losing grip of our intention every single day. That's why we procrastinate. It would be impossible to procrastinate if you worked with intention throughout the day. You only procrastinate when you lose a grip of that intention. And this intention and this deliberateness, which are, in my mind, two sides of the same coin, really exist at the heart of productivity. We used to work in factories. And the conditions about productivity were very, very different in a factory, right? Because we did this repetitive work. We showed up at 9, we left at 5. And after we left work, our attention was ours and our energy was ours too. We didn't burn out or anything like that. But today, your work benefits from all the attention that you could possibly throw at it and all the energy that you could possibly bring to it too. Energy didn't matter in a factory because the work was repetitive. It was very simple. Focus didn't really matter. You could be hungover every day. And I probably would be if I worked in a factory, but it doesn't work with the type of work that you or I do right now. Somebody who brings 50% of their attention to their work is going to be so much less productive than somebody who simplifies their work, becomes more aware, and dedicates 75 or 85 or 95% of their attention to what's in front of them in the moment. And this is what's changed about productivity. And this is why the whole 9-to-5 idea is, frankly, because work doesn't exist inside those boundaries anymore. And it does for some people, and some managers, they like to kind of, bring people in at the same time. But, what if you have the most energy in the evening? One of the ideas that I talk about in the book is this idea of your biological prime time. And so one of the experiments I conducted was every day, and this experiment was a pain in the ass, but it gave me some valuable intel. Every day for 3 weeks, every hour, I tracked how much energy I had, and it was subjective, of course, out of 10. And after the 3 weeks, and I eliminated caffeine, I tried to sleep my natural patterns and, ate small meals. After 3 weeks, I came up with this energy chart for how much energy I had over the course of the day and realized that it was a freaking roller coaster over the course of the day. My energy was not constant. And there were times of the day when I consistently brought more energy and more focus to the work that was in front of me. And I call this your biological prime time. It was a term coined by, I think, Sam Carpenter in his book, Work the System. And I'm going to try to draw this back the best I can. In the knowledge economy that we work in today, our time it's still important, right? Because we have meetings, we have things to coordinate around other people. But I have a chapter in my book called The End of Time Management. And this is important because your time, in my view, because your time doesn't fluctuate. Every day you have those 24 drops of time. But what does fluctuate on a day-to-day, on a week-to-week basis is how much energy you have and how much focus you have. And so why not manage your work around what actually changes on a day-to-day basis whenever you can? And these things are so much more important in the knowledge economy than they were when we worked in the factory. I forget, what the hell was the original question you asked? This is what I do. Even when I meditate and do yoga, before talking to you, I go off on like a million tangents at one time.
So the funny thing is, I didn't even really so much ask a question. I kind of talked about how I love the motivation and the planning. And then, we just football, we just have fun. I mean, this time we're not talking about masturbation, so we're already way ahead of last time.
Oh, yeah. So this is a good plus. My PR people tell me do not make masturbation jokes on podcasts.
Did they actually listen to it and comment?
No, they didn't. That's a joke.
Because that would be brilliant. I would be very, very honored if a new line went into your publishing contract because of our show.
I would love that conversation, and it would be so awkward for them, but I would enjoy every second of it. And if they actually listened to like the podcasts I've done in the past and said like, listen, Chris, you can imagine how this conversation will go. Listen, Chris, you're great in interviews. You bring a lot of energy and you have a lot of experience and you're like really into what you're talking about. But occasionally you go off on these little tangents where you talk about, masturbation, and you somehow find ways to combine that with meditation and Buddhism. And, I really feel it wouldn't be good for the book. If you was taken out of context or anything like that. You can imagine that conversation, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It hasn't. I will update you and your listeners if it does happen in the future, but so far it has not. But yeah, back to kind of the practical bit, because this is one of the things I find with productivity books is when I was writing this book, like I wanted to make the idea, I realize I'm going into kind of a selling mode right now, and that's really not my intention. Like this is something I'm so proud of. I look through the end result and I think about the team that came together to make it and the experiments and the interviews and everything. And it all came down to this one book. This is kind of the crescendo for my decade of, being into productivity, for my years of experimenting with it. So, I'm going to talk it up a little bit, but, I wrote the book that I would want to read. It has short chapters. It has a lot of subheadings at the beginning of every chapter. I, give a takeaway. So if somebody feels like, oh, this chapter doesn't sound like it's for me, I give a takeaway for like what you'll get out of each chapter. So you can skip the ones that you don't want to read. I'm not going to force you to read the entire book. It has a lot of subheadings. I forget if I mentioned that, but the big thing is, it's not only entertaining. It doesn't just have the shrinkage jokes. It also has the practical bits, because really like this has to be a productive book. Like that was my intention with this book is after somebody reads it, what is going to change in the way that they work or in the way that they live their lives? And that's, I think, the only reason to write a book. It's great to write a book, about your experience and all that stuff like that. But at the same time, after somebody reads it, what is the residue that sticks with them? What is different in their lives, masturbation jokes aside, that actually changes on a day-to-day basis? And I think, that was my intention with the book. I don't know if you found that, but yeah, that was my intention behind it, is like, what's the purpose of writing a book if you're not going to change somebody? What's the purpose of doing a talk somewhere? That's one of the things I do these days is talks around productivity. Why get up in front of a group of people if that talk isn't going to change someone? Why write a blog post? Why make a podcast? Why make a course? Why do anything?
I love that. I love that. And I told you in the beginning of the interview, I needed a little bit of your energy and enthusiasm to go back and slog through freaking 70 lectures of a masterclass. So that I just got it. I appreciate it. I've definitely had some value takeaway here.
Okay, good. So are we done? Are we done here then?
No. I mean, unless you need to run. You're the most productive man I know. So if you have to run, it means there's... it's between you and Ari Meisel. Dude only works 2 days a week.
Oh yeah,
He's
I love
pretty
Ari.
productive.
He's a cool guy.
I don't know, man. It's a draw. It's like we give you a stack of documents and whoever finishes it first wins. But that's not productivity though. That's like efficiency.
Yeah, that's just like busy work. That's busy work. Yeah, busyness isn't productivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, how would you do that? Like, how would you structure that challenge? Here's how I'd spend a day facing off against Ari Meisel. Meisel. Okay. I would wake up naturally after getting a solid night's sleep. I would spend the first 30 minutes of the day meditating, sharpening my axe for the day. I would shower. I would eat a full breakfast. I would make a tea, and then I'd just work my ass. Oh,
I love it. Let me ask another semi-serious question, Chris, which is, I think a lot of this comes down to willpower, because I know what I should be doing. And then oftentimes I, like most people, I look down both paths. I'm like, oh, Chris said I should do this, but actually, discipline.
What do you mean by willpower?
At the end of the day, to look down the path and say,
because willpower is different from discipline. Willpower is limited, right? You have a psychological or physiological rather pool of willpower every day. There are some conflicting theories on that. There's actually, for like the super productivity nerds out there, there's this, I think it's called a distraction theory of willpower, where the idea is your willpower never depletes, but there are different biological functions that kind of take over. So if you feel sleepy, that biological function might overpower any kind of self-regulation that you have. But that's definitely besides the point. And like we're playing on expert mode here. But so by willpower, what do you mean?
So, I'll look down the path of this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've read your book, and I've read parts of your book. I've read Gretchen Rubin's book and you know what you're supposed to be doing. And I know I'm not supposed to check my email before I meditate, brush my teeth, have a shower, have breakfast. But every single morning, what happens? Every single morning. Well, I'll quickly look through my email. And it's like, I know what I should be doing, but I don't have the discipline or maybe the self-control.
The self-regulation.
Am I just screwed up?
No, everybody's screwed up in the same way in this regard. Here's one of the great things, and this podcast will be posted like just after New Year's, right?
I think it's coming out the day your book is, which is January 8th.
Oh man, that's so cool. Everybody go out and buy it, or go on Amazon and buy it. So that'd be cool. Anyway. See, one of the great things about New Year's, which just passed, is New Year's resolutions. And I personally don't make them, and a lot of people I know do. But the thing about New Year's resolutions is that 92% of people that make New Year's resolutions fail at them. It's not 25%, it's not 50%, it's not 75%. It's kind of asymptotically close to 100%. And this is what I find beautiful about New Year's, though, is it's this space and this time to step back from the way that you live and the way that you work to set these intentions for where you want to go in the year ahead. And that's great, but 92% of people fail at them. And this is the gap that I think productivity has to bridge, is that there are all these intentions that you make, whether in general, whether every week, whether every day, that you don't act upon. And this is the thing that humans have in common. Only a robot works deliberately 100% of the time. It's impossible to completely bridge that gap between what you intend to accomplish and what you actually accomplish. And I think this is where mindfulness comes in. Planning is great, and it's great to sharpen that axe and, carve out the intentions that you want to make every day, every week. But every moment is when you actually act on these intentions that you make in the broader sense. And so that's where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is this way. And so many people, and I try to tread lightly with the word mindfulness, but so many people shut off when they hear it. But all it means is this way of working deliberately in the moment, and oftentimes doing only one thing at one time. So you create more attentional space around the work that's in front of you. And when you work mindfully and slower, and it's such a paradoxical thing that working slower can allow you to become more productive, but I think it really, really does. Because in this new world of knowledge work and not in the factory anymore, it's about becoming more deliberate about what we're doing in the moment. It's great to form this intention to work on a report instead of checking email, or spend time with our loved ones instead of binging out on Netflix. But it's in the moment that we make these decisions. And I think what happens when that becomes difficult is we lose grasp of these intentions on a moment to moment basis. And so the solution to that then becomes to work on less in one moment, so you create more attentional space around what you're working on. Shutting off distractions, creating the conditions to work more deliberately in the moment. And this is the hard part about productivity. And, if we perfectly acted on our intentions every day, every week, every hour, every minute, my book wouldn't exist. The entire productivity space wouldn't exist, but it's just human to resist things and have this struggle in the moment. A monk does most of the things that he intends to do. And on the other side, you have, who's like the least deliberate person? Like a cocaine fueled stock trader. Like if you picture a monk versus a cocaine fueled stock trader, the stock trader works in a way that is much, much less productive. And a monk doesn't accomplish much either. It's all internal. But the sweet spot between them is kind of in the middle. It's at a pace that's fast enough, but not as fast as the cocaine fueled stock trader, to bring a lot of energy and focus to your work, but at the same time to, be like the monk and bring more intention to those tasks on a moment to moment basis. So again, it's a chat with Chris Bailey, so it's a really long and circuitous answer. But I think the answer lies in bringing that deliberateness down to the moment. Because if you were deliberate in the moment, you would definitely accomplish everything you intend to. And the best path that I've found to do that is to slow down and to shut off distractions and shut off the internet if you possibly can. We spend 47% of our time on the internet procrastinating and putting off what we intend to do. Creating these conditions to become more deliberate in the moment.
I love that. And I think a lot of the advice that I've read and been given is just set up the environment. And it sounds like when you say, eliminate distractions, well, it might be as simple as just not having my phone near my bed, eliminating that temptation. I mean, I don't want to eat bread and carbohydrates, so I just don't buy them. And it makes it so easy when I go to the fridge, there's like leftover steak as opposed to crackers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so fun to start with the intentions and work backwards to your environment. And maybe we're just bigger nerds than other people, but, I do the same thing where, if I want to carve out the conditions to be productive in the morning, I'll leave my phone in the other room. I'll disconnect my router because it's too easy to reconnect on the computer, but then I'll just write and see what comes out and work my best that way. So, it's a lot of, realizing your weaknesses, right? And, just because I'm a pretty productive person doesn't mean I don't have these same weaknesses. I need to create an environment just like everybody else on the planet, but disconnecting the router and leaving my phone in the other room and switching my phone into airplane mode from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. every day. These are ways, and, not having in the fridge. These are ways that I carve out an environment to be productive inside of. And also having a meditation cushion in my office. And so right next to me here, I can set a picture if you want, there's a meditation cushion. And so if I find myself really struggling with a task and that I need to kind of sharpen that axe throughout the day to bring more mindfulness, more deliberateness, more intention to the work that I do, I find, I'll just sit for 5 or 10 minutes on the cushion and meditate to sharpen that axe a little bit.
Oh man, you're inspiring. You're one of those people that everyone's just like, God damn it, why can't I be that disciplined? It's like, you ever see that Onion article? It's like, annoying, overachieving friend even meditates. And it's like, the picture of the guy who posts a picture of himself on Facebook meditating, which is also me.
Yeah. I don't do that. That's like douchey meditation. Like taking a picture of yourself when you do it. Like a meditation selfie. But here's the thing about meditation. And I think the biggest thing that turns people off about meditation is not only the mental resistance, right? So it has these 7 attributes that aversive tasks has. I think meditation has actually, almost every single one of them, right? It's boring. It's frustrating. It's difficult. It lacks intrinsic rewards a lot of the time because you have to wade through all this crap that's going on in your brain. It's hugely ambiguous and hugely unstructured. It has personal meaning, but that's drowned out by all the other attributes that it has. And so we don't meditate. But I think, an equally large cost is that it takes time. And so somebody looks at the choice of, bouncing out of bed and, going about their day and meditating for 15 or however many minutes that they want. And they'll make the conclusion that they'll accomplish more if they just get into their day, and they'll get more done that way. And to be honest, they will. But in the medium to long term, I think for every minute you meditate, you make back at least 2 minutes in productivity that day because you sharpen that axe and you're able to bring more focus and attention to the work that's in front of you. And this is the thing about productivity. It's not just about time. It's not about how long you work on what you have to work on. It's about how much energy and focus that you spend on it as well. take two people, right? And like, let's say that you bring 90% of your focus and you're fully energized throughout the day. And me, I'm like a lazy bum. And so, I multitask, I have all these distractions, and I bring 50% of my focus to what's in front of me. And, I don't sleep well. I don't put good fuel into my body. Maybe I drink way too much coffee, so my energy roller coasters over the course of the day. You're going to get an insane amount accomplished while I struggle to check my email. And that's the difference today. If we both worked in factories, we would both accomplish about the same amount. I might even accomplish a bit more because all that coffee will make me all frenzied and everything and let me get more done, because these are rote tasks. They don't take much thought. But the more you need your brain to work, the more you need to cultivate that attention and that energy. And I really do think, and this is something I believe fundamentally, because I've had these periods of time where I've fallen into and out of meditation. And every time I come back, not because I'm Buddhist, not because of any other reasons, but because it makes me more productive. And if it didn't make me more productive, and this is kind of sad to admit, but I love things like food way too much, and I value my time way too much. And so I wouldn't meditate and I wouldn't eat well and I wouldn't get enough sleep if these things didn't actually contribute to how productive I was every day, but they do. That's the beautiful thing about productivity is it's not about time anymore. It's not about managing your time. That has something to do with it, but it's about your energy and your focus at the same time.
Right. I mean, I did see in the book, the end of time management is an entire section, which I think is brilliant. When I was growing up, my dad always used to tell me, like, as I was getting ready for high school and then getting ready for SATs, you need to learn how to manage your time. And I never understood what the hell that means. And I still, to this day, don't really know what it means or how to do it.
Well, when you manage your time, you're really just managing when you spend energy and attention on something. And because time doesn't fluctuate and your energy and focus do,
you should manage your attention. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you have to manage your time because you have to manage when you work on things, but you should manage it around when you have the most energy and when you have the most focus, and cultivate those things in the first place. And, you could spend all day sharpening your axe, and I'll be the first. Maybe I did make a masturbation
there
joke.
it
You
is.
could spend all day sharpening your axe if you want. There it is. God damn it. I wanted to make it through a whole podcast without. Anyway, but this is, I think, a trap a lot of people fall into. And I fell into this, quite a few times, being into productivity. You could be productive about productivity, but the thing about investing in your productivity is you have to make all that time back and then some. This is why I spent so much time. The book that I wrote is 304 pages, right? So it's a long book. It's kind of bite-sized pieces, but there's a lot of value crammed into that. But what's bigger than this book is I could write another 2,000 pages about the tactics that didn't work, that aren't in this book, that didn't work for me, the quick productivity hacks and tricks that really didn't make much of a difference in my productivity, that didn't allow me to make back the time that I spent on them. And, you can be productive about productivity and not accomplish anything, just like being productive about email. It's about spending your time, your attention, and your energy on the right things, I think. Productivity is important, but you have to do the work.
Absolutely. What are some of the most interesting or kind of crazy experiments that you did, doing the research and working your way up to this book? Well, I don't want to know about your sharpening the axe experiment.
That was not one I wrote about, but it's something I experiment with frequently. No, I did things like, I lived in total isolation for 10 days. Like, here's how I design an experiment. And I'll be the first to admit that my experiments are anything but scientific. But the way I have designed them is I've designed them to really get at a specific thing that I want to play around with, research about. So like living in isolation for 10 days on the surface has nothing to do with productivity, but my intention with that experiment was to observe how people made a difference in my productivity and how sunlight made a difference in my productivity when I cut myself off from both of them. Doing things like drinking only water for an entire month and gaining 10 pounds of muscle mass and becoming a total slob for a week, and
interesting
experiments like that. Working 90-hour weeks was a fun one, where for an entire month, I alternated between working 90 hours one week, then 20 hours the next, then 90, then 20. to see how my productivity varied when I worked insane hours and when I worked more reasoned hours. I conducted dozens of these experiments, and they're all up on my website. But, observing these specific topics and using these subjective experiments as sort of a springboard to research different topics that fascinate me, that kind of orbit around this constellation of productivity.
I guess I want to ask a lot of questions about that, but we can read the results and learn a little bit about how you're kind of measuring these things on the website.
Yeah. And, measuring was the hard part, right? Because my project was called the Year of Productivity. And in a way, studying productivity and trying to measure your productivity when you're doing it is kind of like writing about writing. You think I'm circular, in my interviews, but the project that I designed was very circular. So if there was a challenge in that project, it was measuring how productive I was. At first I started with these really kind of rote benchmarks, right? So I measured how many hours I worked every day, how many pages of books and research articles I read, and how many words that I wrote. But, it was very quantitative and very, the Gettysburg Address was 272 words. And so what if I wrote 1,000 words, but they were crap? You would be more productive writing the Gettysburg Address. And that's what I sort of realized is, in a way, I reverted to, and this was at the start of my project, and I fixed this a bit later on. In a way, I reverted to this factory type mindset when I tried to measure my productivity. And productivity is more of an art than a science. So it's, inherently hard to measure. But what I came to realize at the end of the day, towards the end of the project, is that I was the most productive when I achieved what I intended to achieve, because there was no gap between my intentions and my actions. And I could observe not how much I wrote or how much I read, but how much I accomplished every single day. And also, in addition to that, how much I procrastinated and how well I managed my focus and my energy. Those became how I measured it. And it was less scientific. And I think a part of everybody wants to quantify things. And, I'm a science kind of geek myself. And so that's what I started to do at the start of my project. But I realized that was kind of a shallow way of looking at productivity. Productivity isn't about how much you produce. It's about how much you accomplish.
Oh, that's a quotable for the website. I love that one.
Woo!
That's going to be the one that goes right under the video on the website.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. That's kind of the crux of the book deliberateness lies in the heart of productivity, and intention lies in the heart of productivity as well. And what you're left with at the end of the day are the results, are what you accomplish. And that's kind of what I've aligned the book towards. Because I think, I don't want to call other books shallow, but in a way they kind of, are, when they only focus on managing your time, when they, only focus on these kind of shallow things, you're left with your accomplishments at the end of the day. And I really, really, really believe that.
Brilliant. I think that's a really nice note to end on. Well, first I want to say your book is coming out, give or take, today.
It's been an hour already?
Something like that. Yeah. Time flies. We've been so productive. Let me ask this before we wrap on the recording, and then you and I can kind of powwow and cheat on the audience behind their backs. If people want to reach out to you, I want to say first off, congrats on the book. It's brilliant. I'm really, really excited to read it.
Thank you.
Ladies and gents, that is called The Productivity Project. And we'll have a link that we would love for you to use on the blog post to go pick it up on Amazon or the iBook store. But if people want to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, maybe interview you for another podcast, where should they reach out to you? How do they get a hold of you?
I am at alifeofproductivity.com, Twitter at Wiggle Chicken. That's like my other place that I go to. I'm trying to cut back on social media, but it's like cutting back on email,
hard.
Right? It's really, really hard. Alifeofproductivity.com is probably the best place. And there's no ads. There's no sponsorships on the website. It's just, there's one of those annoying newsletter pop-ups, to be honest with you, but you can X out of that and never see it again in your life. And, I just try to crank out as much valuable stuff as I can on there. The book is The Productivity Project. You can buy it. You don't have to buy it. I'm not going to pressure you into buying it, but you probably should if you want to become more productive.
I love it.
Because this book is, can I go into sales mode for a second?
Do it.
Okay. This book is kind of, it's everything that I know about productivity. And I don't know everything, right? Ari Meisel probably knows a bit more than me, but I know almost as much as Ari Meisel about productivity. And this book is it's the crescendo for all the experiments I've conducted, all the research I've done, all the gurus that I've interviewed, their stories. But at the end of the day, there is the practical bits too. At the end of every chapter, I have these, really simple kind of things that you can do to actually work these things into your life. And yeah, if you get it, I hope you find it helpful. If you don't, that's cool too. I hope we're still friends. And yeah, that's the book, The Productivity Project.
I, again, want to give my full endorsement for the book. I'm really, really excited to actually sit down and read it now that it won't be a fear of spoilers.
And thanks, man.
Yeah, ladies and gents, Mr. Chris Bailey, always entertaining, always productive. Thanks so much for your time today, Chris. It was such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, my friend, take care.
You too.
All right, super friends, that's it for this week's episode. We hope you really, really enjoyed it and learned a ton of applicable stuff that can help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If so, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or however you found this podcast. In addition to that, we are always looking for great guest posts on the blog or awesome guests right here on the podcast. So if you know somebody or you are somebody or you have thought of somebody who would be a great fit for the show or for our blog, please reach out to us either on Twitter or by email. Our email is info@becomingaSuperhuman.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingassuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.